Hey there, my name is Stacey. I am your host for the Disruptive Franchise Podcast, which is very kindly sponsored by Bookwen and Make Your Mark Podcast Agency. Now, as this is the very first episode of the podcast, I thought that we should do a little get to know me and I should introduce myself properly to you. So, I'm going to share my story about how I got into franchising and kind of where it's led me, really. It all starts with what is often a familiar story for those that either buy a franchise or start a franchise. So I'm going to roll back the years, roll all the way back about 11 years ago. I was a corporate high flyer. I loved my job. I was never going to leave. I was going to work my way up to director. I worked in a very male-dominated industry, which was sport. I got to boss around the bosses of football clubs, basically, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. All the free sport you can imagine, lots of travel. Mwah, beautiful. Um, and then we decided to start a family. So I planned my maternity leave, everything was set, I went off very happy. And while I was on maternity leave, I got a call from my boss to ask me to come in for a keep in touch day, which I duly did. And I was told on that day that I had been overlooked for promotion. I'd been overlooked by somebody who was male, had been at the company less time than me, but was just better mates with the board, basically. And that sounds like bad bones, but that is the situation for what it was. And having worked at this company for quite a while, I knew that actually the next step was going to be redundancy. Now, I am quite a stubborn person, and I decided that I wasn't going to take that lying down, baby or no baby. So I put myself out there and I managed to get myself headhunted for what I believed was my absolute dream job. So I'd gone from like depths of despair, tragedy, to, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like, this is the best thing. Yes. Um, and off I went. 9-month-old baby, started a new job in my new company using all my amazing skills, was handed a £1 billion project to help deliver for TV. And it was just a dream come true, except for the work environment. And unfortunately, with a 9-month-old baby, a 2-hour commute into London, and working like I didn't have children to fit into a team, didn't really work for me. Shock horror, right? So it didn't last very long until I was started to struggle with my mental health. And I tried pretty hard to just keep up. But what I actually woke up with one day, about a week after we moved house, on top of that, we'd had a family bereavement and a house move on top of all of this stress. And not surprisingly, I just broke into about a million tiny little pieces. And so finding myself in the depths of a mental health crisis with a small baby in a toxic environment that didn't support me didn't really work very well. I was very, very ill, and I couldn't continue doing what I was doing. I did try a couple of times to go back in and reintegrate, but it became very apparent very quickly that actually they'd prefer to manage me out of the business, which I wasn't in a mental state to deal with. So very long story short, we ended up settling an agreement to settle so that I didn't take them all the way through a tribunal. And I found myself with, a just turned 1-year old and a pile of money and a fear of going back to do the very thing that I had loved the most. I felt like my confidence was completely shattered because I'd been overlooked for promotion in a job that I really loved and felt really valued at. And I felt completely useless emotionally because I'd been ripped to shreds at the other organisation. And so the thought of going back and getting a job just really wasn't where my head was at. So I sat down, ran the numbers, and decided that actually, do you know what? I'm going to invest in myself. I looked at starting my own company. I had owned a company before, but I had been really lonely working for myself, and I didn't want to do that. Now, while I'd been on maternity leave, I actually had done a class with a company called Daisy First Aid. This was quite a new company back then, but during that time, while I kind of had been in the workplace, the owner had franchised. So I thought maybe I'll just have a little look at that. And I looked at loads of different franchises. I did due diligence. I found that there was a resale franchise locally to me for a music and dance company franchise. And I nearly went ahead with that one, actually. The thought of buying a resale of an established business was a bit like, yeah, quite like that. Um, but actually, my mum pointed out that I don't sing very well. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But what I loved actually was with the Daisy First Aid franchise that it was a worthwhile thing to go and do, a business model that I could invest in that would support me and make sure that I had a network behind me where I wasn't lonely. Um, and I absolutely loved what it stood for, having done the class myself as a parent who'd been weaning. So I met up with the owner, Jenny Dunman, the CEO, and I signed straight away. Was really happy. This wasn't my first journey into franchising though. What I'd actually done when I left uni was I took my marketing degree and I got a job at the UK's largest franchisee of a company called Thrifty Car and Van Rental. So I already knew a little bit about franchising from uni days, but also from being in that environment within my first job. So I kind of had some expectations there. But Daisy First Aid was a brand new franchise. So although they had the business model, they didn't have the marketing and the support structures that we have today. And I was able to be a part of that process. Now, about 2 weeks before I did my first franchisee training, I called Jenny and I said, I know I've signed for the Red Hill territory. Would it be possible to have Reigate as well? Because it's not part of that territory. And she said, well, no, because the territories are set and mapped. Well, then can I buy Reigate? She must have thought I was bonkers. Like absolutely bonkers. This crazy lady has bought a franchise and then bought a second territory who no one had ever done that in Daisy before. I was one of the early franchisees in. And she's like, yeah, but you haven't even done your training yet. You might not like it. And I was like, I know I'm gonna love it. And that was it, really, no looking back. So that's how I got back into franchising, which was just wonderful. I had such a great time as an early Daisy First Aid franchisee because I was able to use my marketing skills to grow my business really quickly. So I had a freelancer within the first 6 months. I was already fully booked, and I just grew and grew and grew, and I just loved it. Over the course of 10 years, I basically took on I think it was 5 different territories at various times that I had like bought, sold, owned, etc. I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. But for me, I um, a real I have a real struggle to switch my brain off, basically. That entrepreneurial brain just keeps flowing. So even though I was having a great time as a Daisy First Aid franchisee and it fit around my kids, and just as we'd signed our third territory for Daisy First Aid, I'd literally signed my contract for the third territory, and about a week later discovered that I was pregnant with twins, which was a shock. It was a shock. And I remember going at that point in time, I was doing franchisee training. So I was training the new franchisees with Jenny. And I remember just before the new batch of franchisees came up, telling her, by the way, I've got a surprise. And she's like, oh, what's that? I'm like, I'm pregnant. She's like, oh, that's amazing. I'm like, it's twins. And she's like, oh my goodness. So it was crazy times, but really everything fit around my family. Everything just meant that I could support them and be around for them and not miss those key moments like when they started nursery or school, or being able to be the chair of the PTA when it needed doing, and all of those kind of things, like literally put family first and still made really good money. And with my commercial background was also helping other franchisees to do the same. So that's really where everything kind of started out, really. And I owe Daisy First Aid a lot. And then when COVID hit, I got a call from Jenny to say, can you come into head office and take on the role of support manager? Because they need what you've got. We need to give that to the franchisee network so that we can help them cope. Because I'm a crazy person. I love change. I change stuff for the sake of it. But not everybody feels like that. So I joined head office and had a great time rewriting parts of the ops manual, setting processes up, meeting with all of the franchisees and giving them better kind of commercial grounding. We put a whole onboarding process in place, and I absolutely loved my time there. In the background of all of that, I was building other companies as well. So I hit a point where I had 5 different companies. Daisy First Aid franchise, Parents Mental Health business, Parents Mental Health corporate business, and I was working for head office, and I was doing some other marketing bits and pieces on the side. And it was a lot, but I couldn't say no to anything. So I had so much going on and 3 small kids, like running the franchise. By then I was management franchise. So I'd started as owner operator. I had built the franchise territory up. I took on my freelancer, as I said, I grew that freelance team. And I then brought in an admin assistant. So essentially, my business could run without me. And that became really vital when I had my twins, because self-employed, I knew I couldn't take mat leave and I didn't know what I was going to be able to do or not do when they came. So basically changed the model of my franchise as a franchisee into management led, which was brilliant for me because it meant I didn't have to go out and teach. It meant that other people basically ran my business with me overseeing it and doing all the marketing, which is what I loved. But yeah, I found myself in a point where I had 5 different businesses, and this became really quite a struggle, not because I had 5 businesses, but because I also have chronic illness. I struggle a lot actually with fatigue. And I struggle to say no, and I'm a complete people pleaser. So actually, I found myself in a place of utter burnout. And what happened on top of that, with the chronic illnesses flaring up, I managed to contract pneumonia. For most people, pneumonia is not serious. For me, it put me in hospital, and it was pretty awful. And I've had loads of periods of time over the years where my chronic illness, for one reason or another, has landed me in hospital for a week. And then basically everything stops from a family perspective. But 9 out of 10 times, I'll carry on working from the hospital bed, because for me, work is an amazing distraction. I love to be distracted and kind of enveloped by what I'm doing. It's my thing. It's what I love. But at the point where I had the pneumonia and 5 businesses and I was trying to work from the hospital bed, it was just clearly too much. And as much as I loved franchising, I'd been saying no to a lot of opportunities because people had been asking me, oh, can you help me with this? Or you do that for Jenny, can you help me with this? I'd love it if you could come into my business, or what do you think of this? And I would always say, no, I'm at capacity. I've got like my businesses and that's it. Waking up in that hospital bed was a real moment of something has to change. It was a proper, like, something is not going to work for you here. So I walked away from my partnership business, which was the corporate parents mental health business. I'd looked at my business already, my parents mental health business, to see if it was viable for franchising. And actually, I'd gotten to the point where it was franchise ready. It had an ops manual, it had a customer base. I had 2 prospective franchisees. We had the franchise agreement was about to be written. Everything was ready to go, but I pulled the plug. And the people say to me, well, how can you help people franchise your business when you decided not to franchise yours? And I get that. But I think franchising has to be the right long-term strategy. And for me in that business, it wasn't the right long-term strategy. So actually, we rolled it back. I made it into an online course and we put it into Daisy First Aid. So actually the help that I wanted to do, the impact that I wanted to have, spread through a different channel. But it's why when I speak to people about, wanting to franchise their business, I do it with a real view of, is this the right thing for you and your life? Because for me, it wasn't. It absolutely, I thought it was because I had the knowledge, but I didn't make it the right thing for me to do. So that business changed. Walked away from a partnership, stopped running around doing all of the things, and I just focused on support manager for Daisy First Aid and my franchise. But I started to go and learn about different ways to make money. So I went and did a course for making money online, and it gave me the idea to start the business that I have now. So I completely streamlined everything, started my franchise strategist business, went and did certifications to be certified business strategist, and built my client base by just basically starting to say yes to the things that I'd started to say no to and dropping the things that were weighing me down. And that transformation has been incredible, absolutely incredible. Along the way, I did buy another franchise. I bought a complementary business franchise for me, which is the Business Success Company. So I'm one of their franchisees. But I've also sold all of my Daisy First Aid franchises. And I felt so sad about that. My kids were really angry with me when I sold my Daisy First Aid franchises because it's all they'd ever known me to do. My daughter didn't remember me working in corporate, and they felt really sad about it. But that's okay because literally, just as I sold my last Daisy First Aid franchise at the start of 2025, I also received an offer that I couldn't turn down. So, as well as working with incredible franchise owners, I worked with about 43 franchise businesses in 2024. At the start of 2025, I was invited to become managing director of Daisy First Aid and join Jenny as part of the leadership team. I couldn't say no, really, because as you've just heard, that story that got me where I am all started with me investing in a Daisy First Aid franchise. So for me, it kind of became a bit of a full circle moment. I'd already helped her to build the business to what it was, and we've got nearly 70 franchisees at this point. And she just said, it's right for you to come in. So I did. So a huge amount of franchise experience working with lots of different franchisors, doing a huge amount of different recruitment and sales and marketing things and franchise support. But that gives you a really good overview of like where it started, where it's going, where it is now, where it wasn't going to go. I think for me, what I love the most about franchise is the opportunity. People think that the reason to go into franchising is money and time. And yes, it can be. But mostly it's about the impact. With Daisy First Aid, it was started because Jenny's friend's little gal started to choke. And as a police officer, Jenny knew what to do, but the parent didn't. The impact that that franchise has had has changed Jenny's life, absolutely. But we have saved thousands of children from things like choking incidences and seizures and taught parents on how to do CPR, which they've actually performed and saved their children's lives. The impact of that kind of business, we wouldn't have that if we didn't franchise. And that's what I love. I love the impact, both within franchisors' lives, franchisees' lives, and the customers. And that's really why, for me, this podcast is so important because I'm going to get to share that with you along the way. We're going to peek into lots of different franchise businesses and see the impact that they have and how they do it. And I just think from a franchise industry point of view, it's small enough that it's very supportive, but actually it's worth just over 19 billion pounds to the UK economy. So it's not really that small, but I absolutely love it. So hopefully that journey has inspired you, or at least told you a little bit more about where I come from and why my view of franchising is actually quite unique, because I haven't just been a franchisee. I haven't just started a franchise. I've done so much around, various different aspects of franchising. And I just love it. I light up, my face literally lights up when I talk about franchising because it's been such a key part of my last 10, 11 years. It's been a huge part of my children's lives by proxy. Whether you're in it now or thinking about it, hopefully it's a big part of your life to come too. Thanks for listening to this episode. We will be back next week with another episode, next time featuring a guest.